All right, keeping it 23 degrees sideways. Let's talk about social credit. So, China is moving along with its social credit system. And it is a automated dictatorship. It's an algorithmic dictatorship. It's a digital dictatorship. It's really ugly and it's really fucking scary. So, you have people who you can be warned that your neighbor has low social credit and you should not speak to him. Complete ostracization. You can't get plane tickets if your social credit score isn't high enough. The job impacts, it's really bad. And it's sometimes for actual bad behavior. Like stuff that could get you put in jail if you wanted to do like an actual justice system. But most of the time it's just for dissent or non-compliance or having a different idea or reading a different book. Literally, reading a different book. Reading the wrong book can get you ostracized and denied basic access to services in China because of social credit. Holy shit. Good news! Australia is licensing that technology. Wow. Okay, so the next time a liberal tells you you should follow the Australia plan, maybe you should punch a Nazi. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not in any way advocating violence against fellow citizens of the United States. All right. Now, so we used to talk in the 90s, back in the internet heyday, back when everything was fresh and new and Gibson was a bestseller. We used to talk about gift economies. And there was an idea of social credit at the time that was very different. It was the idea that it was all very based on positive. There was no negative to it. Just that if you wanted to build your social credit, then you could do nice things. There would be an algorithm where you could be like, hey, someone hasn't had a happy birthday message from anyone ever, so you go deliver a card. That's, I think, a Gibson short story right there. And it was just looked at as very positive. Of course, there's a downside to it, and there's a negative side to it, and that is that if you don't build your social credit, then having zero ends up being like having negative. So, well, non-participation is still allowable in a situation like that. With China, it's not. Non-participation is not available. And we're running into that problem in the US now, too, where you can't just ignore the Facebook liberal doxing mobs, okay? If they want to dox you because you did something, said something wrong, work at the wrong company, whatever it is that outraged someone this minute, then they'll dox you. You don't get to not participate. So it's very much like the Chinese social credit system that we're developing here as a kind of socially and corporate imposed social credit system. However, we don't have a government mandate for it, so you do have a couple of other options. These options are dangerous and divisive, but they are growing in importance, scale, and success. For example, you have Twitter and you have Gab. So Twitter mobs have destroyed lives. It happens all the time. You find something you don't like, the Twitter mob descends and they brigade you and they out you and they start threatening your kids. Your kids can't get into schools. Literally, your kids can't get into schools anymore. Your kids get expelled from schools, you lose your job. The Twitter mobs. Yeah. So, how much does that matter when more people start using Gab instead? Okay, so if you happen to be an employee of a far-left ideologue, then yes, it's a problem. However, if you are a reasonable working person at all, you're probably going to get picked up by someone on the other side because they don't like unfair treatment. That's actually a very right-left distinction right now. If you get fired for having the wrong opinion, then basically the American left does that to you, and then the American right will pick you up and say, hey, here's a job. It may suck, but it's a job because we don't like seeing people treated unfairly. It's a very weird distinction to me because it's supposed to be the other way around, but it's not right now. And I'm not trying to be super political with this. I just really want to talk about social credit and one of the coming dangers, and that is polarization. The more people you have doing Twitter mobs, the more you end up with other people, out of self-defense, engaging in gab mobs. So you end up with these people who have to enforce their own other side of things. It's not necessarily right-left. It's kind of right-left, but it's not. And so they have their own social credit system where if you say the wrong thing, if you say, hey, you know, maybe Bernie Sanders has a point about this, you're ostracized from them. Okay? You have to play by the rules. You kind of have to pick a side, and it's really hard to not end up getting more and more polarized because the sides don't go into the middle. They just go out to the extremes. The conservatives in America have resisted this very well. If you look at the data, there's a lot less. There's the right in the U.S. has stayed kind of in the same place on the right, while the left has gone kind of way over here. But that's going to change, and I think that's going to change really soon. And I think social credit is going to have a large part to do with it. Social credit is an economy. And if it's a mandate, government-controlled single economy, then that's what it is. You basically have to black market to escape it. But if it's not, if it's just an economy of social bullies, corporations, and you still have the freedom to make your own economy, you're going to make a different social credit economy for every group of people who doesn't fit with whatever your standard is. You're going to end up with 4 or 5 or 7 social credit economies, and they're all going to be different. And they're going to get very... Tribal's not the right word. Okay, people misuse tribal, but they're going to get very isolated and very homogenous. And they're going to get further and further and further apart. And that's a very dangerous thing for our society because sooner or later, you're going to have people who literally cannot talk to each other. We're already there for the most part. There was some report recently in universities that had a plurality of people on the left, students on the left, who literally think that anyone on the right is actually evil. Not misguided, not dumb, not they have their points, I have my points, but actually evil. That's a scary place to be, because you can't have a conversation then. So, take this for what it's worth. Social credit, you should pay attention to it. You need to pay attention to what's happening in China. You need to pay attention to what's happening in Australia and England. Okay, in England, some guy got fined for hiding his face from a facial recognition camera, and that's bad juju right there. Pay attention to this. Look at what's happening, and seriously, fight it. I don't know what to tell you about how to fight it. You know, writing your Congress critters is always worthwhile. But think about it. Social credit's coming. Are we going to have a restriction and a right to privacy? Are we going to have protections and limits on it? Or are we going to splinter into 7 or 13 or, hey, 23 different social credit economies and balkanize the United States? Do you really want Sierra Leone in the U.S.? Ask yourself. So, sorry to be a downer, but everything's a little bit sideways. Stay sideways. Have a good one.